But to suggest that somehow Chinese people don't have a sense of grievance in relation to Japanese war atrocities and the return of Japanese, or the risk of a return to Japanese militarization and fascism within the Asia-Pacific region is sorely mistaken and underestimates the extent to which these issues do, provoke strong feelings from people across China.
Hello, 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。The flare-up in relations between China and Japan continues after Japan's first female prime minister suggested that they might militarily support the government in Taiwan if the People's Republic of China takes measures to reclaim the province. Naturally, Beijing is furious, especially following the hideous atrocities Japan committed against China in the recent past. Not least of all, killing hundreds of thousands during the Nanjing massacre, putting thousands of Chinese men, women and children through hideous torture and medical experiments at Unit 731, and occupying Taiwan Island for 50 years until 1945. And the Chinese people are furious, cancelling hundreds of thousands of flights to Japan as just one example. But what are the greater ramifications, and why will Prime Minister Takaichi not retract and apologise? Today we'll go beyond the propaganda and check out all of the details with special guest, Professor Warwick Powell. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Boreham here in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. Firstly, an apology for the lack of videos recently, you guys. I've been on so many work trips over the past few weeks that it's been hard to keep up. First, I spent a week in Taiwan province, then headed to the former revolutionary capital of China, Yan'an. And last week I was in New Zealand for the opening of a really important museum. Now, all of those videos are coming soon. But today we have to discuss the situation between China and Japan, after Japan's first female prime minister suggested that the reunification of Taiwan province with the Chinese mainland would be a matter of life or death for Japan, allowing them to interfere militarily under the claim of self-defense. Of course, such comments angered China, who has been the victim of hideous Japanese military aggression many times in recent history, with tens of millions of Chinese losing their lives at the hands of the Japanese. China has asked Prime Minister Takaichi to retract and apologise, which she has so far refused to do. Now, to get more details, I'm joined by Professor Warwick Powell from the Queensland University of Technology. First up, Professor, how significant are Prime Minister Takaichi's comments about Taiwan, and why is China so upset about them?
Well, they are significant because no Japanese Prime Minister has ever expressed the view that incidents across the straits would constitute a reason for Japanese military intervention. So they are pretty significant. The reason why China, I think, has reacted strongly is that China understands that this is a break from normal transmission, if you will, and flags a dangerous prospect, which is a remilitarized Japan thinking that it has a right to interfere in China's national matters and ultimately also cause and contribute to greater regional destabilization. As you also touched on, from the point of view of many people in China, there are still very significant wounds related to Japanese atrocities during the Second World War and prior to the Second World War from 1931 onwards, when Japan invaded China, and of course going back even further when Japan colonized the island of Taiwan. And many of those wounds are actually felt very deeply this year in particular, being the 80th anniversary of the defeat of global fascism and the defeat of Japanese fascism. Many Chinese people actually have family members who were wounded or killed during the period of Japanese aggression in China. And, just for your viewers' edification, I wouldn't be here today had my grandfather not escaped Shanghai during the latter part of 1937. So, what Japan did to China and to Chinese people touches many people and continues to remind people of the risks of Japanese fascism and militarization.
Yeah, like you said, very deep wounds, and I'm glad, obviously, you're here today. Now, I'm obviously no expert in Japanese politics by any means, but I understand that Prime Minister Takaichi retracting and apologising for those comments would lead to her losing face domestically and having to stand down. Is that correct?
Look, it's a problem generally, right? National leaders don't want to be humiliated both on the national stage or on the international stage. And she does come from a section of the Japanese body politic, which is, I guess, loosely described as the hard right nationalist section, and she depends a lot on the support that she gets from that part of the Japanese political spectrum. And I think she would definitely confront some serious domestic challenges to her legitimacy and authority in the short term if she was seen to be backing down and apologising. So it's hard to imagine that she'll make any explicit moves in the short term.
Now, as you mentioned, Chinese people are definitely furious with some 500,000 airfares to Japan being cancelled and refunded since the comments were made. But I was wondering what other measures have been taken, and are they likely to force the Prime Minister to apologise eventually, in your view?
The other measures relate to prohibitions of Japanese seafood into the Chinese market. The Chinese market is a huge market for many of Japan's products, and the prohibitions on Japanese seafood, I think, is an expression of China's broader anger at the situation. Whether or not that's enough to push the Japanese Prime Minister, to, in the short term, recant what she said, I think is a different question altogether for the reasons that we just discussed. I think the likelihood is that the Japanese Prime Minister will double down on what she said, and perhaps, and this is the nature of international diplomacy, perhaps over a little period of time, with a little bit of cooling of the situation, there will emerge a space sometime down the track where a return to normal interactions may be possible. But I think it's going to be very difficult in the short term.
But even in the long term, perhaps, with that comment, as you said before, it signals a return to militarism. Surely the relationship can't go on as usual unless that's retracted.
Well, it also depends on whether she's Prime Minister for long. So Japan has gone through a period of significant domestic upheaval where Prime Ministers have come and gone. And I think part of the issue for China in its relationship with Japan is that, yes, this does signal a resurgence of militarization, particularly in the office of the Prime Minister. But at the same time, it also knows that the situation domestically in Japan is quite politically unstable, and whether or not this particular Prime Minister survives beyond this term is another question. So, international relationships is in part a question of patience, and the Chinese have shown for many decades that they have the patience of Job.
China definitely does have time. Now, lastly today, Professor, some in the West are saying that Chinese people, average Chinese people, aren't actually angered at all by this, and that all the bluster is just coming from Beijing. What would you say to them?
Well, 500,000 plane tickets were cancelled. So, there's, I guess it's Beijing plus 500,000 people at least. Look, the reality is that many people, because of the historical wounds that this speaks to, will feel to one extent or another impacted by the sentiments expressed by the Japanese Prime Minister. There will be degrees of anger, of course. It's a big country, 1.4 billion people. Some people will be more angry than others. But to suggest that somehow Chinese people don't have a sense of grievance in relation to Japanese war atrocities and the return of Japanese, or the risk of a return to Japanese militarization and fascism within the Asia-Pacific region is sorely mistaken and underestimates the extent to which these issues do provoke strong feelings from people across China.